Sometimes the deepest humiliation isn't when strangers laugh at you. It's when the woman who promised to stand beside you quietly whispers, "Please don't talk, you'll embarrass me," while her entire family pretends they didn't hear it. 10 minutes later, those same people were staring at me with panic in their eyes, praying I could save the one thing they thought money could protect. My name is Ethan Brooks. I'm 40 years old, born and raised in Ohio, the son of a high school math teacher and a firefighter who believed a man's worth was measured by how calm he stayed when everyone else lost theirs. I never cared much for expensive watches, luxury cars, or conversations designed to impress strangers. I built systems. I solved problems. I preferred listening over talking, and somewhere along the way, people started confusing silence with weakness. Rachel, my wife of 11 years, used to understand that. At least, I thought she did. Richard Carter's 65th birthday was held at Ashford Manor, one of those historic estates outside Boston where every room smelled faintly of polished wood, old money, and expensive whiskey. Crystal chandeliers reflected warm golden light across perfectly dressed tables, while a string quartet floated soft jazz through the ballroom. Servers in black tuxedos moved quietly between guests carrying silver trays filled with champagne that probably cost more than my first car. Rachel looked beautiful that evening. An emerald silk dress wrapped elegantly around her figure, matching earrings catching the chandelier light every time she turned her head. She belonged in rooms like this. Confident, graceful, effortlessly charming. Standing beside her, I felt exactly like what her family had always believed I was. An accessory. Richard was surrounded by business partners, attorneys, investors, and old family friends. Conversations drifted through the room. Acquisitions, market forecasts, vacation homes in Aspen, private golf clubs. The kind of topics that always seemed designed less to communicate and more to establish rank. Rachel adjusted my tie before we entered the ballroom. Then she smiled. Not warmly, not lovingly, politely, like someone preparing an employee before an important meeting. "Please don't talk tonight," she whispered without looking at me. I blinked. "What?" She lowered her voice even further. "Just smile." A pause. "You always make things awkward." Those 6 words landed softer than a slap, and somehow hurt more. For a second, I wondered if I'd misheard her. But then she added the sentence that stayed with me long after the music stopped. "You'll embarrass me." She squeezed my arm gently before walking ahead to greet her parents, leaving me standing beside the entrance as if I had simply imagined the conversation. I followed a few steps behind. Richard barely glanced up from his conversation before giving me a distracted handshake. "Ethan." "Happy birthday, Richard." "Good to see you." His eyes had already moved toward someone wealthier before he finished the sentence. Susan kissed Rachel on both cheeks. "You look stunning, sweetheart." Then she looked at me. "Ethan. Just my name. Nothing else." Nathan Carter, Rachel's younger brother, walked over holding a glass of bourbon. "There he is," he laughed. "Still surviving the corporate world?" I smiled politely. "I've been fortunate." Nathan smirked. "I'm sure Rachel keeps everything running." A few nearby cousins chuckled. I noticed Rachel laughing too. Not loudly, just enough. Enough for me to hear it. Enough for me to know she wasn't uncomfortable. She agreed. The conversation moved on without me. People asked Rachel about promotions, travel, investments, charity events. No one asked what I did. No one seemed interested. That was fine. It had been that way for years. Silence is easier than explaining yourself to people who've already written your story. I picked up a glass of sparkling water and stepped toward one of the tall windows overlooking the estate gardens. Outside, the evening sky had turned deep blue, with rows of lanterns illuminating perfectly trimmed hedges and marble fountains below. Everything looked peaceful. Perfect. The kind of perfection that usually breaks all at once. Behind me, someone tapped a champagne glass. Richard stood near the center of the ballroom preparing to begin his birthday speech. Guests slowly gathered closer. Rachel joined her parents. Nathan laughed at another joke. I remained near the back of the room, exactly where everyone expected me to be. Then the lights flickered. Once, Twice. The music stopped. A sharp alarm echoed somewhere beyond the ballroom doors. Within seconds, confident voices became confused whispers, then frightened shouting. And for the first time that entire evening, every single person in the Carter family turned around looking for me. Emergencies have a strange way of revealing who people really are. The polished smiles disappear first, then the confidence. Finally, the illusion that control was ever real. The alarm continued screaming through the ballroom. Not loud, violent. The elegant music had vanished, replaced by hurried footsteps, confused voices, and the unmistakable sound of expensive glass shattering somewhere beyond the dining hall. Guests instinctively stepped backward. Some reached for their phones. Others simply froze. Richard Carter lowered the microphone halfway through his birthday speech, staring toward the hallway with the same expression I'd seen on construction foreman moments before a bridge inspection went terribly wrong. "What on earth is happening?" Susan whispered. No one answered. A young event coordinator rushed into the ballroom, completely out of breath. Her makeup had started running down one cheek, and the clipboard in her hands shook so badly several papers slipped onto the marble floor. "Mr. Carter," she gasped. "The power management room. There's been. She couldn't finish the sentence. Richard walked toward her. "Calm down. What happened?" She swallowed. The entire estate lost control of its electrical distribution system. A murmur rolled through the room. "The backup generators aren't responding. The fire suppression network is offline. The elevators stopped. The security gates won't open. And," she hesitated, "the refrigeration units storing tonight's medical supplies have shut down." That last sentence changed everything. Richard's expression hardened. "What medical supplies?" "The insulin, heart medication, and refrigerated blood products for Mr. Whitmore's treatment." The room fell silent. Everyone knew Charles Whitmore, billionaire investor, Richard's oldest business partner, 73 years old, recovering from major heart surgery. He had insisted on attending despite his doctor's concerns. Now every minute mattered. Several guests immediately began talking over one another. "Call maintenance. Where's the electrician? Reset the breakers. Get another generator." Suggestions. Lots of them. None useful. I stayed where I was, near the window, watching, listening. Years ago, my father taught me something during a house fire. The loudest voice rarely belongs to the person who knows what they're doing. It belongs to the person who's scared. Rachel appeared beside her father. "I thought this place had redundant systems." "It does," the coordinator answered nervously. "They all failed." Nathan frowned. "What company manages this estate?" "Blackridge Integrated Systems." "I'll call their regional office." He pulled out his phone. No signal. Several others checked theirs. Nothing. The estate's communication network had collapsed with everything else. Panic spread quietly, like water finding cracks in concrete. I noticed details nobody else seemed interested in. Emergency lighting had activated in only half the ballroom. That meant part of the battery grid still worked. The ventilation system had stopped, but only in this wing. Elsewhere, the air ducts were still moving. Interesting. Very interesting. Richard barked another order. "Find the chief engineer." "We can't," someone answered. "He left 30 minutes ago after checking the control room." Rachel crossed her arms. "This is unbelievable." Her voice still carried irritation. Not fear. Not yet. She glanced toward me only briefly, almost automatically, then looked away again. I don't think she expected me to move. Why would she? 10 minutes earlier, she'd asked me not to speak. Now nobody else seemed capable of finding answers. The ballroom kept growing warmer. Guests loosened ties. Women removed jackets. The emergency lights flickered once more. Not random. Rhythmic. Like something was attempting to reboot. I quietly counted. 3 seconds. Pause. 3 more. Then darkness. A pattern. Not a failure. A protection cycle. That realization settled in my mind before I even knew why. Richard rubbed both hands across his face. "I've hosted presidents here. Senators. Foreign investors. If this becomes public..." He never finished the sentence, because at that exact moment another voice interrupted him. Older. Weak. Barely audible. Charles Whitmore slowly reached for the edge of the table. His face had turned pale. One hand pressed tightly against his chest. His wife screamed. Several guests rushed forward. Chairs crashed against the floor. Someone shouted for a doctor. Another yelled to call an ambulance. Richard looked completely helpless. Rachel looked terrified. Nathan stood frozen. For 11 years, I'd watched this family believe that expensive suits, influential friends, and impressive titles could solve every problem. But real emergencies don't care about resumes. They only care whether the right person is standing in the room. Richard slowly turned. His eyes searched the crowd. Then they stopped on me. For the first time that entire evening, he wasn't looking through me. He was looking at me. Ethan. His voice sounded smaller than I'd ever heard it. Can you help us? There was something almost surreal about hearing Richard Carter ask me for help. For more than a decade, I'd been the quiet man standing at the edge of family photos, holiday dinners, and celebrations that never truly felt like mine. I wasn't disliked openly. That would have required acknowledging me. Instead, I had become something easier to overlook, a reliable background figure who carried chairs after Thanksgiving, drove people to the airport when flights were delayed, and fixed small problems without anyone remembering who had solved them. Now, every eye in the ballroom rested on me. I didn't answer immediately. Not because I wanted revenge. Not because I wanted them to suffer. But because I needed a few seconds to observe. Real emergencies reward patience before action. Charles Whitmore had collapsed into a chair, one hand still pressed against his chest while his wife knelt beside him. His breathing was shallow but regular. His lips hadn't turned blue. That was encouraging. Several guests crowded around him, blocking fresh air more than helping. "Give him space," I said calmly. Nobody moved. I repeated myself. "Ladies and gentlemen, please step back." Something in my voice finally reached them. The circle opened. Charles inhaled more deeply. "Better." I knelt beside him. "Mr. Whitmore, can you hear me?" A slight nod. "Good." "Chest pain?" Another nod. "Sharp or heavy?" "Heavy." I looked toward the event coordinator. "Is there an AED in this building?" "Why, yes." "Where?" She hesitated. "I don't know." Of course she didn't. Rachel watched silently from only a few feet away. Her expression had changed. The confidence she'd worn all evening had disappeared, replaced by uncertainty. It wasn't guilt. Not yet. Just confusion. She had never seen me in a situation where people actually listened. Richard leaned closer. "What should we do?" "First," I replied, "stop everyone from shouting." He turned immediately. "Quiet." The ballroom fell almost completely silent. Interesting. Minutes ago, no one cared what I had to say. Now Richard repeated my words without questioning them. I stood and looked toward the emergency exit corridor. The flickering lights were still cycling every few seconds. That pattern bothered me. Electrical failures don't usually pulse so consistently unless a protection system is isolating sections of a network. Which meant this might not be a complete system collapse, only a controlled one. If I was right, someone had either triggered an automatic isolation sequence, or something inside the central control infrastructure had failed in a very specific way. Nathan hurried back after another failed attempt to reach outside assistance. No signal anywhere. "I know," I answered. He frowned. "You know? The communication repeaters probably lost synchronized power with the control network." He stared at me. "How would you know that?" I didn't respond, because explaining would take too long. Instead, I asked the event coordinator another question. "How old is this estate?" "About 8 years after the renovation." "Original infrastructure?" "No, completely modernized." I nodded slowly. That confirmed my suspicion. Someone nearby muttered, "Is he an electrician?" Another guest whispered, "I thought he worked in some office." I almost smiled. People love assigning simple labels to strangers. They're easier than curiosity. Rachel finally spoke. "Ethan." Her voice was softer than before. "I didn't know." She stopped herself. Neither of us needed to finish that sentence. No, she didn't know. Not because I'd hidden my career. Because she'd stopped asking about it years ago. Somewhere between promotions, charity galas, and family expectations, our conversations had become schedules, grocery lists, and polite small talk. She knew the color of my favorite coffee mug, but not the projects that kept me awake at night. That wasn't entirely her fault. I had chosen silence too. It was easier than competing for attention. Richard interrupted my thoughts. Can this be fixed? I looked toward the hallway leading deeper into the estate. It depends. On what? Whether the problem is mechanical. I paused. Or whether the system is doing exactly what it was designed to do. No one understood what I meant. But I did. And for the first time that evening, I had a strong feeling this wasn't simply a power outage. Something else had triggered the building to protect itself. If I was right, walking into that control room would answer far more than why the lights had gone out. Some doors separate ordinary moments from the ones that change your life forever. The steel door leading to the estate's control room was one of them. I need access to the central operations room, I said. The event coordinator nodded immediately. This way. Richard didn't hesitate. I'm coming with you. So am I, Rachel added. I looked at all three of them. No. Richard frowned. What do you mean no? The fewer people inside, the better. If I'm right, this isn't just an electrical problem. The hallway beyond the ballroom felt strangely different. Emergency lights cast long red shadows across polished stone floors, while every few seconds the overhead fixtures flickered in the same steady rhythm I'd noticed earlier. 3 seconds. Pause. 3 more. Not random. Deliberate. As we hurried down the corridor, hotel employees rushed in opposite directions carrying flashlights, first aid kits, and portable radios that produced nothing but static. Everyone looked overwhelmed. No one looked in control. The coordinator stopped in front of a reinforced metal door marked Authorized Personnel Only. The chief engineer usually keeps this locked. She slid her master key into the reader. Nothing. She tried again. Still nothing. The electronic lock lost power, she whispered. I examined the door for only a second before spotting the mechanical override hidden beneath a small brass cover plate. Flathead screwdriver. She blinked. I don't have one. A maintenance worker standing nearby immediately reached into his tool pouch. I do. 30 seconds later, the door swung open. Warm air rushed out. Too warm. The room should have been cool. Instead, dozens of equipment racks stood silently beneath dim emergency lighting. Computer monitors displayed warning messages while cooling fans had stopped spinning. The smell caught my attention first. Not smoke. Hot circuitry. Something had overloaded. I walked slowly between the equipment cabinets, reading labels instead of touching anything. Power distribution. Environmental controls. Security integration. Fire suppression. Building automation. All interconnected. Exactly what I'd expected. Richard stood near the entrance. Can you fix it? I don't know yet. Nathan suddenly appeared behind him, breathing hard. I found another engineer. A gray-haired technician stepped inside. I'm David, he said quickly. I've worked here since the renovation. Good. I pointed toward the nearest monitoring console. Tell me exactly what happened. He rubbed both hands together nervously. Everything was normal. Then around 8:15, the building management system issued an automatic level 4 isolation. By itself. Yes. No fire. No. No flooding. No. No explosion? No. I nodded. That answer eliminated half the possibilities. I leaned closer to one dark monitor before pressing its emergency power switch. The screen came alive from battery backup. Lines of diagnostic information filled the display. Most people would have seen meaningless technical codes. I saw a conversation. The system wasn't dead. It was refusing to restart. Because somewhere inside the network, it still believed danger existed. Rachel quietly entered the room despite my earlier instructions. Ethan. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I know you told me not to come. I didn't turn around. It's fine. She watched silently as I scrolled through system logs. After nearly a minute, she finally asked the question no one else had. "What exactly do you do?" The room became very still. David looked at me. Richard looked at me. Even Nathan stopped talking. I answered without taking my eyes off the screen. "I design failure recovery systems." Nobody spoke. I continued. "My company builds integrated infrastructure that keeps hospitals, airports, government facilities, and industrial sites operating when everything else goes wrong." Nathan stared. "You mean?" "Yes, this kind of system." The silence that followed felt heavier than anything said earlier that evening. Rachel slowly lowered her eyes. For years, she'd introduced me as someone who worked with computers. Not because I'd ever described my career that way, because she'd never asked for more. David interrupted. "Can you tell what's causing it?" "I think so." I highlighted one repeating alert on the display. There. The warning appeared again. And again. And again. Every recovery attempt had failed for the same reason. Not because the equipment was broken. Because one subsystem kept reporting a catastrophic environmental hazard. Richard looked confused. "But there isn't one." I met his eyes. "Exactly." I stood up. "This building isn't shutting itself down because it's damaged." I pointed toward the alert flashing red across the monitor. "It's shutting itself down because something is lying to it." The room fell completely silent. And in that moment, I realized we weren't dealing with an accident anymore. We were dealing with a system that had been convinced an invisible disaster was still happening. The only question left was, who or what had told it to believe the lie? The difference between panic and leadership is often just one person willing to think before moving. I had spent my entire career preparing for moments exactly like this. The irony was that the people who needed me most had spent years believing I had nothing worth offering. I leaned closer to the monitor, scrolling through the diagnostic logs one screen at a time. The messages repeated with mechanical precision. Environmental hazard detected. Isolation protocol active. Manual restart denied. The system wasn't malfunctioning. It was obeying orders. "David," I asked without looking away from the screen, "where are the environmental sensors managed?" "They're distributed throughout the estate." "I know. Which controller collects their data?" He pointed toward a cabinet near the back wall. "Panel C." I walked over and knelt beside the rack. 3 status lights were green. One was flashing amber. That single amber light was controlling an entire estate worth tens of millions of dollars. Interesting. I opened the maintenance panel. Richard watched nervously. "Please tell me that's good news." "It could be. What do you need?" 5 uninterrupted minutes. "You have them. No one touches anything." Richard immediately turned toward everyone in the room. You heard him. Not a single person argued. I almost found that amusing. For 11 years, every suggestion I'd offered at family gatherings had been politely ignored. Now a single sentence from me became an order. Rachel stood quietly near the doorway, watching every movement. She didn't interrupt. She simply observed. Perhaps for the first time in our marriage. I connected the maintenance terminal to the controller and opened the live sensor map. Hundreds of small indicators appeared across the estate. Green, 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 green. Then one blinking red icon. Sublevel 2. Mechanical corridor. Temperature. 178 degrees Fahrenheit. I frowned. That's impossible. David stepped closer. What? If that reading were real. I pointed toward the display. The fire suppression system would already be flooding the basement. It isn't. Exactly. The sensor wasn't measuring heat. It was lying. Or more accurately, something was making it lie. Nathan folded his arms. So we replaced the sensor. I shook my head. If this were your home, maybe. This building doesn't trust people. It trusts data. As long as that controller believes there's a catastrophic fire, every safety protocol will remain locked. Richard rubbed his forehead. So how do you convince it otherwise? You don't convince it. You prove it. I looked at David. Can you physically inspect mechanical corridor too? His face lost color. Without ventilation? It'll be hot. But yes, I'll go. I'm coming with you, I added. Rachel immediately stepped forward. No. Her voice surprised everyone, including me. "You shouldn't go down there alone." For a brief second, our eyes met. There was fear in hers. Real fear. Not embarrassment. Not frustration. Fear of losing someone. It reminded me of the woman I'd fallen in love with years earlier, before expectations had slowly replaced affection. "I'll be fine," I said gently. She wanted to argue. Instead, she simply nodded. David grabbed 2 industrial flashlights while I picked up a portable thermal scanner hanging beside the equipment rack. The elevator was useless. We took the emergency stairs. The deeper we descended, the warmer the air became. Concrete walls echoed with the distant hum of emergency batteries struggling to keep essential systems alive. When we reached the mechanical corridor, the flashlight beam swept across rows of pipes, electrical conduits, and ventilation ducts. No smoke, no flames, no excessive heat. The scanner confirmed it. 72 degrees. Completely normal. David looked relieved. "So the sensor's defective." "Maybe." I walked farther down the corridor. Something felt wrong. Not technically. Instinctively. Then I saw it. A maintenance access panel hanging slightly open. Only half an inch. Most people would never have noticed. I crouched beside it. One screw lay on the floor. Fresh scratches marked the metal cover. Someone had opened this panel recently. Very recently. Inside, dozens of communication cables connected the environmental sensors to the central network. One cable looked different. Not damaged. Replaced. Brand new. I slowly reached toward it but stopped before touching anything, because taped neatly beneath the cable, almost hidden in the shadows, was a tiny electronic device no larger than a pack of chewing gum. It wasn't part of the original system. Someone had put it there, and suddenly I understood. This had never been an equipment failure. Someone had engineered the entire crisis before the first guest arrived at Richard Carter's birthday party. People often imagine expertise as something dramatic, a flash of brilliance, a miracle solution, a hero who somehow knows everything. Real expertise is much quieter. It's noticing one detail everyone else walks past, then following it until the truth has nowhere left to hide. I held my flashlight steady over the small electronic device. David leaned closer. "What is that?" "Not factory equipment." "Can you tell what it does?" "Not until I remove the cover." I reached into my jacket pocket and unfolded the small multi-tool I carried almost everywhere. My father used to joke that preparedness wasn't paranoia, it was respect for reality. 2 screws. That was all standing between us and an answer. I loosened them carefully and lifted the plastic housing. Inside sat a compact circuit board, a miniature radio transmitter, and an independent battery pack. Whoever installed it had planned ahead. Very far ahead. David's eyes widened. Someone added this after the renovation. Yes, it bypasses the normal sensor network. I traced one of the wires with my finger. It intercepts the temperature signal, then sends false data back to the controller. He stared at me. "So the building thinks there's a fire, even though there isn't." Exactly. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. The mechanical room suddenly felt much colder. Not because the temperature had changed, because intent had entered the conversation. Equipment fails. People make mistakes. But someone had chosen to build this. Chosen to hide it. Chosen tonight. I took out my phone and photographed every angle before touching another wire. David looked surprised. Evidence. Always. If this becomes a criminal investigation, nobody should be accused without proof. He slowly nodded. That answer seemed to impress him more than anything technical I'd said. I disconnected the transmitter's power source. Nothing happened. Interesting. It has battery backup, I murmured. So cutting one wire won't stop it. Instead of forcing anything, I followed the cable to its connection point. It terminated inside a relay interface. Clean installation. Professional workmanship. Not the work of an amateur. Whoever did this understood industrial control systems. Very well. David swallowed. Can you disable it? Yes, but only once. He frowned. What do you mean? The moment I disconnect this device, the central controller will begin recovering. If someone is monitoring this operation remotely, they'll know their sabotage has failed. He looked toward the staircase. You think whoever did this could still be here? I don't know, but I never assume otherwise. Upstairs, the muffled sounds of anxious voices echoed faintly through the ventilation shafts. Every passing minute increased the pressure. Charles Whitmore still needed medical attention. Guests remained trapped behind disabled security gates. The estate's reputation balanced on the edge of public disaster. And yet, rushing now would create new risks. I pressed the radio button clipped to David's belt. Richard. Static. Then his voice. Ethan? I found the cause. A long pause. You did? Yes. It wasn't an accident. Silence filled the channel. Finally, he asked quietly, can you fix it? I believe so. How long? If everything else is healthy. Less than 2 minutes. I heard someone exhale with relief. Then Richard spoke again. Ethan, I owe you an apology. I closed my eyes briefly. Let's save that conversation for later. There are more important things right now. He didn't argue. Rachel's voice suddenly came through the radio. Soft. Uncertain. Please. Another pause. Be careful. Those 2 words hit harder than I expected. Not because they erased what she'd said before the party. Nothing could. But because they sounded genuine. For the first time that evening, she wasn't worried about appearances. She was worried about me. I disconnected the radio. David watched me in silence. Your family? He asked carefully. My wife's family. He nodded as though he suddenly understood much more than I'd actually said. I took one final look at the improvised transmitter. There would be time later to ask who installed it, who paid for it, who benefited. But none of those questions mattered unless people upstairs were safe first. I slipped on a pair of insulated gloves hanging beside the maintenance cabinet. Then I placed one hand on the relay module. Ready? David nodded. As I'll ever be. I disconnected the first connector. Nothing. Then the second. The tiny transmitter went dark. For exactly 1 second. The entire mechanical room became completely silent. Then every cooling fan around us roared back to life. Fresh air surged through the ventilation ducts. Indicator lights across dozens of control panels changed from red to green. The building had finally recognized the truth. And somewhere above us, Ashford Manor was beginning to wake up again. Respect doesn't always arrive with applause. Sometimes it arrives in complete silence, when every person in the room realizes they have spent years misunderstanding the one individual standing quietly beside them. The effect was almost immediate. Emergency lights stopped flickering. The ventilation system surged back to life with a deep mechanical roar that echoed through the service corridors. One after another, the status indicators across the control panels shifted from red to green. Environmental hazard cleared. Isolation protocol released. Systems recovering. David stared at the monitors in disbelief. I've never seen a recovery this fast. You designed systems like this? I nodded. Not this exact building. But the architecture is familiar. Within seconds, another notification appeared. Primary network online. Security gates restored. Medical refrigeration active. I exhaled quietly. Charles Whitmore's medication would remain viable. That alone made everything worth it. David reached for the radio. Control room to ballroom. We're operational again. The reply came instantly. Cheers. Actual cheers. I hadn't expected that. Richard's voice followed a moment later. Ethan, you did it. We're coming downstairs. I smiled faintly. There'll be time later. I need to verify every subsystem first. He laughed softly. Even through the radio, I could hear the relief in his voice. Of course you do. I spent the next several minutes checking each recovery sequence. Power grid. Stable. Fire suppression. Stable. Emergency communications. Stable. HVAC. Stable. Nothing was rushed. Because the quickest way to create another disaster is assuming the first one is over. David watched every step carefully. You don't skip anything. No. Why? Because confidence without verification is just another form of negligence. He slowly nodded. I wish more engineers believed that. Before I could answer, footsteps echoed down the concrete stairwell. Richard entered first. Behind him came Susan, Nathan, Rachel, several members of the estate staff. Nobody spoke. They simply looked around the room, then at me. The silence felt completely different from the silence at the beginning of the evening. Earlier, I had been invisible. Now, they were trying to understand who I actually was. Richard crossed the room and extended his hand. Not casually, not out of obligation, with genuine respect. Ethan, I don't know how to thank you. I accepted the handshake. You already did. He looked confused. You trusted me. For the first time tonight. His eyes dropped for a moment. I should have done that years ago. Susan stepped forward next. I owe you an apology too. So do I, Nathan admitted quietly. I thought you worked in IT support. A small smile escaped me. I've heard worse. That finally broke the tension. Even David chuckled. Rachel remained where she was, near the doorway, watching me. Her eyes looked different now. There was admiration. There was regret. And perhaps something even harder to admit. Recognition. As though she were meeting her own husband for the first time. She slowly walked toward me. Ethan. She searched for words that refused to come. Finally, she whispered, I was wrong. No excuses. No explanations. Just 4 simple words. For a brief moment, I remembered the woman who had encouraged me through graduate school, celebrated my first promotion, and stayed awake with me during long nights when impossible deadlines seemed endless. People don't become strangers overnight. They drift there. One small misunderstanding at a time. One unanswered question. One forgotten conversation. Until eventually they no longer recognize the person standing beside them. I know, I answered gently. She lowered her eyes. I'm sorry. I believed she meant it. But some truths arrive too late to erase the damage that created them. Before anyone could say another word, David's portable radio crackled sharply. Security to control. David picked it up. Go ahead. We've reviewed the surveillance recordings. A pause. There's something you all need to see. Everyone looked toward the radio. The security officer continued. The person who entered Mechanical Corridor 2 wasn't a maintenance employee. Another pause. And according to facial recognition, he was invited to tonight's birthday party. The room fell completely silent once again. Richard's expression hardened. You mean? Yes, sir. The sabotage didn't come from outside. It came from one of your guests. Every trace of celebration disappeared from the room. The crisis wasn't over. We had restored the building. Now we had to discover who had tried to bring it down from within. Some people expect justice to arrive with shouting, accusations, or dramatic confrontations. Life rarely works that way. More often, the truth simply walks into the room, stands quietly in the light, and waits for everyone to recognize it. Within minutes, Ashford Manor had begun to look like itself again. The chandeliers glowed warmly above the ballroom. The quartet cautiously resumed playing soft music. The security gates reopened, allowing emergency medical personnel to reach Charles Whitmore, whose condition had already stabilized after receiving the medication that had nearly been lost. Guests slowly returned to their conversations. But something had changed. Not in the building. In the room. Every time I walked past someone, conversations paused. People who hadn't noticed me earlier now stepped aside without thinking. Several guests nodded respectfully. One elderly gentleman extended his hand. I've worked with engineers for 40 years, he said. I've never seen anyone diagnose a system's failure under pressure like that. Thank you. It was a team effort. He smiled. Humility. That explains the rest. Before I could answer, Richard approached with 2 security officers. One of them carried a tablet displaying surveillance footage. We found him, the officer said. The screen showed a man wearing a catering uniform entering the restricted mechanical corridor nearly an hour before the party officially began. A baseball cap hid most of his face, but not enough. The officer enlarged the image. The room became silent. Richard's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. I know him. So do I, Susan whispered. The officer nodded. He wasn't part of the catering company. He attended tonight as a guest. Nathan looked closer. He worked for Harrison Development. Richard slowly lowered his head. My former business partner. The realization spread through the room. 6 months earlier, Richard had outbid Harrison Development for a multi-million-dollar redevelopment contract that changed the future of both companies. The lawsuit that followed had become local business news. Apparently, someone had decided losing money wasn't enough. They wanted humiliation. Public humiliation. A failed birthday gala. Trapped investors. Medical panic. Damaged reputation. Destroyed business relationships. Everything had been carefully planned. Richard looked at me. If you hadn't been here. I finished the sentence quietly. The outcome would have been very different. He nodded without speaking. One of the officers stepped aside to answer another call. When he returned, his expression had changed. Local police have already located the suspect's vehicle. They're making an arrest. No one celebrated. There wasn't much to celebrate. A crime had been prevented, not erased. Richard dismissed the officers before turning toward everyone gathered nearby. I owe all of you an explanation. He looked directly at me first. But Ethan deserves one even more. He raised his voice just enough for nearby guests to hear. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduced many important people tonight. I completely failed to introduce the most qualified person in this building. Every conversation stopped. Richard continued. My son-in-law didn't simply fix our estate. He protected every person standing in this room. I judged him far too quickly. And I was wrong. Those final words carried more weight than any speech he'd given all evening. Applause slowly filled the ballroom. At first, only a few people. Then dozens. I stood there feeling strangely uncomfortable. Recognition had never been something I chased. I had simply done the job in front of me. Rachel stood a few feet away, tears forming quietly in her eyes. Not dramatic. Not theatrical. Just honest. When the applause faded, she walked toward me. I've replayed tonight in my head 100 times already, she whispered. And every version begins with me telling you not to speak. I looked at her, neither angry, nor triumphant, just tired. You weren't embarrassed by me, I said softly. You were embarrassed by the version of me you'd created in your own mind. She closed her eyes. A single tear slipped down her cheek. I don't know when I stopped seeing you. I do. She looked up. It happened one small moment at a time. Neither of us noticed. For several seconds, we simply stood there while the party slowly returned around us. Music. Laughter. Conversations. Life moving forward. Rachel reached carefully for my hand. I didn't pull away, but I didn't hold hers either. Some distances aren't measured in steps. They're measured in years. And closing them requires much more than one extraordinary evening. As I looked across the ballroom, I realized something surprising. The greatest thing I'd restored that night wasn't the electrical system. It was the truth. Everyone finally saw me exactly as I had always been. The only question left was whether the people closest to me had discovered that truth soon enough. People sometimes ask me what happened after that night. They expect a dramatic ending, a divorce filed the next morning, a triumphant speech, or some perfectly scripted moment where everyone who underestimated me finally paid the price. Real life is rarely that theatrical. The most important victories happen quietly, long after the applause has faded. The birthday celebration officially ended nearly 2 hours later. Most guests left with stories they would probably tell for years. Some would remember the mysterious system failure. Others would remember the attempted sabotage. But I suspected most would remember something far simpler. The quiet man in the corner. The one nobody had bothered to know. As I walked toward the front entrance, the cool night air felt different from when I had arrived. Lighter. Not because anything around me had changed. Because something inside me had. Richard caught up with me before I reached my car. Ethan. I turned. He stood there without the confidence that usually surrounded him. For the first time since I'd known him, he wasn't speaking as a successful businessman. He was speaking as a father. I failed you. I didn't answer. He continued. I spent years judging you by what I could see. I never asked who you really were. I never gave you the respect you had already earned. His voice broke slightly. And tonight, you protected my family. I nodded once. Take better care of them. I will. No. I looked directly into his eyes. I don't mean with money. I mean with respect. He understood immediately. I promise. This time, I believed him. A few moments later, Susan stepped outside carrying a small box wrapped in dark blue paper. I know this won't fix anything, she said. But Richard wanted you to have his birthday watch. I looked at the box, then gently pushed it back toward her. I appreciate the gesture, but I don't need a watch to remember tonight. She smiled sadly. You really are different. No, I'm just comfortable knowing who I am. She quietly nodded. Rachel was the last person to leave the house. She walked toward me slowly, wrapping her coat tighter against the evening breeze. Neither of us spoke immediately. Some conversations deserve silence before words. Finally, she whispered, I've been thinking about what you said. Which part? That I stopped seeing you. I looked toward the lights glowing inside Ashford Manor. It wasn't one moment. It happened little by little. When people stop being curious about someone they love, they slowly replace that person with assumptions. She lowered her head. I did that. Yes. I'm sorry. I know. Another long silence settled between us. I don't expect forgiveness overnight, she admitted. I wouldn't deserve it. I appreciated her honesty. For years, I had imagined what this conversation might feel like. Anger, satisfaction, vindication. Instead, I mostly felt peace. Holding on to resentment is exhausting. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It simply means refusing to let yesterday decide tomorrow. I opened the passenger door for her. She looked surprised. You're still driving us home? I smiled faintly. I made a promise 11 years ago. I don't break promises just because people disappoint me. She wiped another tear away before quietly getting into the car. The drive home passed mostly in silence. Not an uncomfortable silence, a thoughtful one. When we reached our house, Rachel remained seated after I turned off the engine. Ethan, if I had never said those words tonight, would you still have helped everyone? I answered without hesitation. Of course. She looked puzzled. After what I said, I nodded. Character isn't measured by how we treat people who respect us. It's measured by how we act when we're given every reason not to. She covered her face for a moment, overwhelmed by emotions neither of us tried to name. Months later, Richard testified in court against the men responsible for the sabotage. The evidence we documented that night led to criminal convictions. Charles Whitmore made a full recovery. Ashford Manor upgraded its entire security infrastructure. David eventually called to tell me they had adopted several of the recovery procedures we discussed in the control room. As for Rachel and me, healing wasn't immediate. Trust rarely is. But something important had returned to our home. Not perfection. Respect. And I've learned that respect is the foundation every lasting marriage quietly stands upon. That night, my wife asked me not to speak because she thought I would embarrass her. In the end, I never needed to prove my worth with words. I simply lived it. Because true strength doesn't demand recognition. It waits patiently until the truth speaks for itself.